Hey everyone, welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into something super fascinating, the tale of 2 gigahertz. We're going to look at what exactly happens when highly organized systems are just pushed to their absolute limits by chaotic, high-frequency variations. It's a really wild ride, so let's just dive right in.
All right, first things first, let's establish our baseline. In the world of computer science, specifically in French IT terminology, this whole concept of structural instability is called la gigue, or as we usually call it in English, jitter. Now you've got to understand, jitter isn't just about your network being slow, it's about a network being predictably unpredictable. It measures the variation in latency over time when data packets are transferring across a network. Just imagine data packets piling up in router queues causing massive congestion. Or think about clock drift, where the sender and receiver just completely fall out of sync. Or dynamic routing, where packets suddenly take entirely different physical paths. All of this creates a totally chaotic, highly unstable data stream.
And let me tell you, this jitter wreaks absolute havoc depending on the protocol you're using. If you're using TCP to, say, download a file, the sensitivity is pretty low. The system kind of just corrects itself and you just experience a general, annoying slowdown. No big deal. But for UDP, like when you're on a live video stream or a VoIP call, the sensitivity is absolutely critical. The system literally doesn't have time to correct errors fast enough, and what happens? You get audio distortion, video stuttering, dropped frames, and total packet loss. Think about the last time your video buffered or just glitched out completely. That is exactly this mechanism in action. The structural integrity of the stream basically just falls apart under that chaotic timing. So the big takeaway here is that jitter is basically the ultimate stress test for a digital systems architecture. But here's the question that shifts our entire perspective. What happens when this exact same concept of high-frequency structural instability and rapid, chaotic timing is applied not to a digital network, but to the actual hardware of the human body? Well, let's pivot entirely. You see, la gigue actually has a double meaning. Beyond digital jitter, it's also the French term for the traditional Irish jig. And thanks to a really deeply comprehensive biomechanical analysis presented by Dr. Christophe Delong and Kinexa formation, we're going to look at this dance today. But we're not looking at it as just simple folklore. Oh no. We're looking at it as a hardcore system of extreme kinetic energy and incredibly rigid physical control. Just take a close look at the dancers. You are literally witnessing a profound visual illusion. It's like 2 completely different systems are operating at the exact same time. From the waist up, it's a perfectly still, almost paralyzed upper body. The arms are totally glued to the sides. The posture is perfectly, rigidly straight. But from the waist down, it is a violently explosive and completely chaotic system. This rigid aesthetic is designed specifically to mask the insane physical forces that are being generated by the lower body. And just how immense are those forces? We're talking 3 to 4 times the dancer's own body weight, because the dance is performed entirely on the toes and the balls of the feet, which is what we call the demi-point. Every single time a dancer lands a vertical jump, they are forcing their body to absorb 3 to 4 times their body weight entirely through the front of their feet. I mean, just imagine jumping and landing heavily without ever letting your heels touch the ground to dissipate that kinetic energy. It's a massive, continuous shock to the human system. To really get a sense of how this impact builds, let's look at the footwear. On one hand, we have soft shoes, or gillies, which allow for a bit more natural elasticity. But contrast that sharply with the hard shoes. Notice the really thick heels and tips. Now, these aren't just thick leather. They're actually reinforced with fiberglass and resin to create that iconic percussive sound. But by wearing these, the dancer strips away almost all of their foot's natural padding. They are effectively turning the human leg into a massive, completely uncushioned shock absorber that just transmits impact directly into the bones. Now, to actually handle this, the body has to structurally lock itself down in some truly awe-inspiring ways. As detailed by Kinexa formation, there's some fascinating anatomy behind what's called the end dehors, or outward rotation. Basically, the piriformis muscle and the deep rotators of the hip force this permanent 45-degree external rotation of the legs. The thighs are permanently crossed. And what this does is it completely alters the mechanical axis of the knee and locks the pelvis into a totally rigid kinetic chain. It literally transforms the lower body into a highly tense spring mechanism. And let me tell you, that spring mechanism is built for terrifying speed. Less than 100 milliseconds. That is the absolute maximum amount of time the foot is in contact with the ground during those rapid percussive steps we call trebles. To exploit the elastic energy of the tendons and actually achieve up to 15 to 20 impacts per second, the foot has to rebound off the floor almost instantly. It is quite literally the biological equivalent of high-frequency network packets firing without delay. To maintain this kind of speed, the musculature has to adapt remarkably. Take the triceps soroure, that's your calf muscles, and the Achilles tendon. Because the dancer is in constant plantar flexion, which basically means they're permanently up on their toes, the calf muscle quite literally never rests during the performance. It must functionally hypertrophy, so it actively grows larger and denser, specifically to handle this extreme vertical propulsion and the constant isometric tension. Honestly, without this growth, the leg would simply collapse under the G-forces. Okay, now let's break down the physics of one of the most iconic moves, the lateral heel click, because this isn't just a tap, it is a literal ballistic collision in midair. Following the basic physics equation of force equals mass times acceleration, the adductor muscles aggressively accelerate the legs inward. When those rigid fiberglass heels collide, they create a violent, high-frequency shockwave. And because there's absolutely no soft tissue to absorb it between the heels, that shockwave travels instantly from the calcaneum, your heel bone, straight up the tibia and directly into the knee joint. This requires the ACL and LCL ligaments to instantly fire and stabilize the knee so it doesn't just blow out from the sheer lateral force. Which brings us to a really fascinating neurological paradox. Up to now, we've talked about the hardware, the muscle fibers, the bones, the ligaments, but let's shift over to the software, the brain. The immense difficulty of this dance isn't just about moving your legs insanely fast. It's actually the active, conscious effort it takes to force the arms and torso to remain perfectly, rigidly still, while the lower body is simultaneously generating massive, violent kinetic force. Think of the dancer's brain as a highly optimized CPU mapping out these functions in real time. You've got the cerebellum rapidly managing the complex ternary rhythm, executing error corrections in under 10 milliseconds. Then you have the striatum firing off the footwork through deep procedural muscle memory. But the absolute most processor-heavy task of all? Cortical inhibition. The brain must actively suppress millions of years of natural human locomotor reflexes. I mean, imagine trying to actively stop your arms from swinging when you trip or jump. Your arms naturally want to swing to balance you. The dancer's brain has to aggressively block that natural signal just to keep the upper body paralyzed. But, just like a digital network experiencing way too much jitter, the human hardware can completely break down when its structural limits are pushed too far. As Dr. Christophe Delong highlights, these system failures manifest as pretty severe pathologies. All those continuous shock waves and that extreme tension lead to things like Achilles tendinopathy, tibial periostiditis, which you probably know as shin splints, and metatarsal stress fractures, where the bones of the foot just simply crack under the repetitive force. Without proper conditioning, chronic ankle instability is basically a near certainty. So, I'm going to leave you with a bit of a provocative thought here. We started out today by looking at la gigue as the chaotic jitter of data packets in a digital network. And we ended by looking at la gigue as a human body pushed to the absolute extremes of biomechanics, physics, and neurology. So, between an unstable digital network routing data at the speed of light and a human brain coordinating microsecond ballistic collisions while actively suppressing its own evolutionary reflexes, which gigue is truly the most complex system? Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope this completely changes how you look at the incredible engineering of the human body.